Good morning. Today I want to load the pile. So we have basically our collected Humanure material here, stored in a closed receptacle with closed lid, so no odor comes out, and that could stand like that for a matter of months. Doesn't need anything. So when I load the pile, this is since people concerned about pathogens and worms, we keep detailed temperature records that show that pathogens and worms and items of concern are dealt with properly and set up as sanitary. So I start with just making a record. Today is 6/1, and we have two thermometers here. One shows 141 degrees temperature, and then we also measure temperature on the side of the pile. Shows basically 127 degrees. So I just make a record of temperature really quick. We could put it back, remove thermometers, and get the gloves. And I'm gonna prepare the pile, which is right now pile is covered basically with straw, and start preparing it by basically pulling the straw to the side and to the corner to open the middle, just like that. Just kind of pull it and push it toward the side to open basically our compost itself. So, and basically when I try not to mix the straw, which is a cover material, and biofilter and prevents any odors coming out, I'm basically trying to keep it separate from an actual compost material, which you see here. And you see already creatures there doing our decomposing and stuff.
I don't see that.
And before basically we open it, you saw that we registered the temperature of 140 degrees there, and you probably will see it now as I'm digging the middle. You'll see how hot the pile is. I also want to point out that as of now this pile was loaded about 10 days ago, and as of now you won't be able to find any material we put here in form it was that was familiar to us, which is poop and pee. There is no poop smell or pee smell. Walter here could confirm it. So it's already been processed by this wonderful bacteria. So, and I'm preparing to load the pile by opening kind of the middle, so that there is new material always goes in the very middle of the pile basically. So that's what we do for pile preparation. I'm just pushing it to the sides, kind of like that, trying to keep it away from the very side, and just creating kind of an opening in the middle, like that. So the only thing that really still remains in the pile in the familiar form is the food refuse. So we also put the food in this pile. We have a couple of food buckets today too. So, and that's basically preparation. So I kind of just dug the big hole in the middle, and the new material will go in. And you could see by evaporation how hot it is. It's basically about 145 degrees right now. Any organic material could go here. We have residents here who will have like banana peels and things like this. So it's a perfect place for organic material to get passed on onto creatures down the stream for us, for processing and basically converting it to the soil rich nutriment, you know, like which is a compost is. So it's just a nice place to put all organic materials, including things like we take some shredded paper from the office, discarded cardboard boxes. All of that could literally go there. So we did the first step, which is open up the pile to load the new material. And one of the important conditions for successful composting is a proper combination of aeration and moisture. So moisture would be provided by basically our composted material, which is urine, provides really nice moisture content, and aeration we introduce into the pile, especially when we load it. I put a little bit of grass clippings and things like this, kind of on the bottom right there, where we're gonna start like disposing our stuff. So it will kind of trap the air in the middle of the pile and will ensure that the reaction would kick on easily, because oxygen is very present inside the pile. So with that, basically I usually would start with the food buckets, put them kind of first on the bottom of the current load. So, and that's what I do now. I'm just basically opening the food buckets, getting them ready to load.
And this is the collection of how much time?
Well, these food buckets I bring from my mom. She cooks a lot, and she also they also rescue food from the trash, and that's usually 10 days worth of things. So I will have usually about a dozen plus Humanure receptacles over a period of 10 days, and about maybe 3-4 food receptacles. Our loads are vary between 40 gallons to 70 gallons of Humanure per load, basically. So that's what we're doing today. We'll probably end up with about 50 gallons of Humanure. So I'm just turning the buckets inside. This pile could take really anything, as long as it's organic, including animal mortalities, and full-size corpses could go in the pile. So I first load the food, and we have one more food bucket here. And food, to be honest, is one of the stinkiest part of the load. When we start Humanure is actually has much less odor to it. So I put the boards for, especially for Nikolay there. When I load the pile, I'll try to put this board and kind of put the buckets on it, so that I don't stress mid size of my body, and just push the buckets there, and then just basically turn them over to into the pile. So then I basically open the Humanure buckets and slide them over like so. So you could also see that at no point I come into the contact with the matter inside the receptacles. So it's a very sanitary system where it goes straight from the receptacle where the matter is collected straight into the pile, and within probably 2-3 days the temperature here would reach thermophilic levels, which is above 115 degrees Fahrenheit, which basically provides sanitation for anything that we put here. When pathogens are exposed to the thermophilic temperatures, which is, as you saw, our pile stays at around 130 to 145 degrees, pathogens, worms, any items of concern, they get basically eliminated within a matter of hours. So that's why this system is very, very sanitary in regards how basically directly from collection it goes into the place where it's non-chemical, non-technological, strictly biological thermal conditions that sanitize the matter. So that makes this system quite unique.
And when you say 130, 140, that's Celsius.
No, this is Fahrenheit. So yeah, I'm talking Fahrenheit here, because that's what my thermometers are graduated in. It's they don't have Celsius, so I kind of like record everything in the Fahrenheit.
And what is it equivalent in Celsius?
60, I believe 140 would equate to about 65 degrees, but don't quote me on that. So yeah, and that provides me also a wonderful exercise, so I don't have to pay for any gym membership.
So this is the poo and the pee.
Correct. Yeah, so that's basically, we have here at Deer Park, we have about 10 people, full-time humanures, who collect it and contribute. So that's basically about 10 days worth of 10 people doing it, which comes up to, as I mentioned to you earlier, about like one person produces about one of these a week. 5 to 7 days you'll have one of those, which is just a mixture of our excreta and the sawdust. So human excreta, like poop and urine, are extremely rich in nitrogen, which is a resource that we've been depleting from the earth when we grow the plants. And that's a wonderful way to just get the compost ready. It's basically mixed with just a sawdust, which uses as a cover material, and that provides ideal mixture between nitrogen and carbon for the bacteria to process it and basically create these thermophilic conditions and process it into really like a black earth. You know, that's what would be here in about a year time. And I want to point out that that mixture, and Walter could testify here on the camera, doesn't really have very offensive odors. You definitely could register a bit of a tiny bit of a kind of a toilet odor, but there is no offensive odors, even though some of these buckets could be standing here for prolonged period of time. There is something about this combination of sawdust and poop and urine that kind of really keeps it without producing offensive gases. So at no point when I load, I gag with discussed, so it's very inoffensive smells here. So loading the pile is actually quite pleasant.
I'm standing at a distance for a reason. No, I'm kidding.
As you could see, loading it is extremely easy. Putting them on the board and then just kind of turning them into the pile, and basically our load is done. So when our load is done, we come to the second portion of the load, which is basically what I do. I use this special fork, pitchfork, that is dedicated to Humanure processing. It's not used for anything else, and I just basically flatten the load, you know. And you could see that most of things that you see is literally just a sawdust, very inoffensive. And then I kind of like push the cover material on the sides a little bit toward the center. We are not gonna close that just yet, because as a next step we're gonna wash our receptacles, and all the wash water from the receptacles would go inside the pile. So the only place where anything that touched inside of these receptacles will end up in a different place other than the pile. So everything will end up in the pile, which is again guarantees a very sanitary procedure, you know, so that we're ensuring that we're not spreading any kind of potential pathogens or diseases. So now I'm gonna show how we're washing the buckets. Yeah, and I use for the people, especially where there is no running water. We have running water here, but it's far away. We are not putting any hose beeps here for the reason. So I personally want to kind of keep everything as simple as possible. And so I basically have this little rigged up device that I use for washing the buckets, and then basically a receptacle with the clean water, and the buckets basically washed 3 times. And I usually on one operation I wash basically about 4 buckets at the time. So at first we just rinse them, and you could see how just simply kind of putting clean water over them already makes receptacles quite clean. And then I basically collect it in one of those, like so. And that's a first step, which is the first rinse. So this again goes into our pile, and pile loves water, so especially now arid temperatures, one of the things that this pile may need is actually added water, and using wash up water to put back is also go along well with providing a right moisture content there. And then we have I have a pile here of soapy, or bucket here with the soapy water. So second step is basically I get about 1.5 scoops of the soapy water, and then I take this slightly extended, basically toilet brush, and next all I do, I just give it a brush with the soapy water carefully, so, and then transfer it to the next one out of 4. Do the same thing, brush, brush, brush. Next. So for me personally, this is a twofold exercise. One is sanitation, so we want our receptacles clean. So when these are the wash receptacles, for example, when you take any of our wash receptacles, you would see how nice and clean they are. So they're pleasant to use, and with that comes kind of my really second joy in washing receptacles is really just to keep that system attractive to people. So I think it's important that we make it kind of easy and attractive and free of odor. So that wash procedure of washing buckets or receptacles basically 3 times guarantees that they won't have any kind of odor or any kind of like residue on the receptacles itself. And as you could see, it's extremely easy to wash. So I usually do four receptacles, and then that washed water again goes back into the middle of the pile. So everything goes there. We use a biodegradable soap, so that there is no conflict there with some nasty chemicals. So, and now we up to the third step of cleaning the receptacles, which is another rinse. So just how I started, I just kind of rinse them with the clean water really quick, like that. So now, again, collect it in one. And then this rinse water also goes into our compost pile, and that's basically kind of concludes how we clean the receptacle. So it's again rinse, brush with soap, and then rinse again. And then this
And what does the soap do?
soaps ensures that
Yeah, but I mean in the pile.
it's going to be eaten up by the bacteria. So this is an extremely powerful bacteria. It's called thermophils. It's an ancient bacteria which is basically extremely powerful in regards to what kind of matters it could eat. And really what they could eat is anything organic. So if you use the biodegradable soap, you should have no worries to put as much soap into that pile as possible. All of that would be basically transformed by this wonderful bacteria into wonderful soil, really. So, and of course that ensures that whatever was touching inside of these receptacles, all of it 100% will end up there. And of course what soap does is just basically, soap is not killing any kind of bacteria, but what the soap is wonderful at, it's really washing down the surface, and it ensures that whatever was on the surface gonna be washed down into there. And then as the last step of our cleaning, we're basically just putting the receptacles upside down for drying it, and then they basically gonna dry up and be ready for use in about a day. So that's kind of a procedure on washing our receptacles. So Walter, I'm gonna wash the rest. I don't know if you wanna take a break, because then I wanna show Nicole how we like closing the pile after the wash up is done. One of the ways it happens before you start depositing material onto the receptacle, it's important to have what's called the primer layer, which is basically just 1 inch to 2 inches of sawdust on the bottom. And then of course if you do your business, as long as you keep your poop kind of toward the middle of the bucket and it doesn't touch the walls, then basically when I empty, everything just comes out, and what you have on the walls is just sawdust, so like a wet sawdust. So that's why it's so easy, as Walter noticed, that's why it's so easy to wash. So you basically, I just rinse it, and you see how bucket is already almost clean. And then again, that's the first wash, so we're putting it back. Four, 12, 14. Yeah, this setup is probably not for like apartments and condo living in the middle of the city, but anybody who lives in single family home and has a little bit of space in their backyard. Our pile is quite big because we have a lot of people using it, but here you could see an old pile, which is basically 5 feet in diameter and about 4 feet high. And that pile is very sufficient for the family of 4, and that probably will take about 1 year for the family of 4 to fill that pile. So imagine you have that pile, and then you have, for the family of 4, you probably only need like 5, 6 receptacles, some space to store these receptacles, and that's all you really need, so which would be basically space that big. You know, and then you could even dry your receptacles on top of your pile, you know. So this setup that we have is quite wide and generous on space here, but of course it could be shrunk down for somebody who has like a smaller backyard or things like this. Yes. It takes me about per week about 1 hour of maintenance of that system, which is really you kind of present to it, which mostly comprises of loading and cleaning the receptacles.
Why you call it the receptacles and not buckets?
Yeah, that's a recommendation. This system is not mine. I'm just following that wonderful system developed by this extremely wonderful individual and scientist. His name is Joseph Jenkins. And Joseph Jenkins spent about 40 years of his life developing this system, promoting it, and also making it scientifically sound with all the necessary research to show that this system is the best sanitation we have right now on Earth for our excreta. And there are a couple of recommendations he has, and one of them is not calling it a bucket, because there is apparently stigma in the world and in the United States about the bucket toilet, which really brings up some bad memories for people. It didn't for me, but I'm just following a teacher. So his recommendation is basically to call it by different name, a vessel or receptacle or something like this, and not a bucket, because it's kind of just brings kind of a bad connotation somehow for some people. So that's why. This is a waterless system toilet, so that uses 0 water during the use of it. So the only water usage for that system is basically what you see now, which is basically washing the receptacles. I wash them again 3 times, rinse, soap and brushing, and then rinse again. So 3 times, and as you saw, we just washed about 14 receptacles, 5-gallon receptacles. And to wash these 5-gallon receptacles, 14 of them, I use basically about 4.5, 5 gallons of water. So that's the only water use that we have. So other than that, it's water free, which for your perspective, 4 or 5 gallons of water is basically 2 flushes of toilet. So it's basically water use of that system is incomparable to our current system, which really relies every time we flush, we're basically flushing about, depending on your toilet, between 2.5 to 6 gallons of water, again depending on your toilet. So every time you go to the toilet, that's a clean water being transformed into basically pollutant, you know, environmental pollutant. So obviously that system allows you to avoid that type of consumption. Very water efficient. You see, washing is done, and I still got a tiny bit of water left in here. With that, you could see that for everything we did here, we will literally use less than a bucket of water. And I didn't realize it, but with doing it through carrying the receptacles around and stuff, I really start understanding the volumes of things. And one of the interesting discoveries that I had, or it's not really discovery, it's just a realization, is basically when we have one of these filled up with human excreta, right? The way our current system works, basically average American is using 18 gallons of water per day to flush their excreta, which is poop and urine down the toilet. 18 gallons every day. 18 gallons, basically, you could imagine 18 gallons would be about 4 to 5 receptacles full of water like that. It fills up in a week. So I always like to imagine every time I have one of these filled up, imagine 25 of these next to this bucket full of water, and that's what you're saving with this system. So again, one of these filled with human excreta equates to 25 buckets filled with water. So if anything else, that's also my motivation on kind of like saving the water, because it's every time you basically don't flush, you're really saving a substantial amount of water, which is, especially here in California, is extremely important for us to find a way to consume less water. So anyway, the process is done here. So I'm gonna put our receptacles to dry right here. Put this back, and that will bring us really to the last step for today, which is now we're gonna close our pile to ensure there is no odors and things. So what I do, I rake a little bit of this old compost that you could see still emits some heat. So I basically rake this old compost over the new deposit like that. Then give it a nice tap to flatten it. Then I rake a little bit of straw from the sides. So at the end of the day, you want to create a pile that is kind of flat on top, so there is no big heap or anything like this. And then after we're done with that step, we're basically gonna add a little bit of new straw, and the straw here acts as a biofilter. That's what the pile, even now, I could barely register. Actually, what I smell here now is some food, I think. But after we put this straw, which acts as a biofilter, no odors would be coming through, and that's not only important for this pile to be attractive to humans, but it's also important not to attract any kind of flies, animals, to come and try to dig in the pile. So if you put enough material, which my recommendation is 6 inches, which is about that much, that's what we're putting. So we want about that much, 6 inches of straw on top of it, and that basically will conclude our loading of the pile. So I'm gonna come here, Walter, if you could move a bit. So it basically takes about 2-3 chips. Chips are this, like, that's a chip, you know. It basically takes about 2, 3, 4 of those, depending on your load. We have a big load here, but basically just get this new straw, which smells wonderful and fresh. We just basically rake it nicely over the top like that. And that's it. And then we reinsert our thermometers, and then we're done. So our thermometers is basically 18 inches deep, 18-20, I don't remember exactly. So one thermometer goes in the middle. As you remember, we loaded the new material in the middle. So this thermometer is basically the way we load it. We don't mix anything. So this only stays in the newly deposited matter. This thermometer is just, it's not really required. Usually people have just one. I have another one because I'm just like kind of researching what's happening in the different parts of the pile. I usually would insert that closer to the edge, so that I also have a record that thermofilling processing of the pile still happens within the edges of the pile. So I think I want to add one more chip of that straw here, just to make it a little thicker. And this straw is a locally available, basically refuse also. So it's basically byproduct of hay. A lot of farms here, they'll have horses, and they use hay. And the result of processing of the hay is this straw that is kind of really disposable material. We get it very inexpensively delivered to the deer park, and that makes maintenance of our pile super easy and super kind of attractive and clean. So as Walter knows, he walks by that pile. That pile is right next to our walking path, and it's completely odorless free, completely fly free. There are no animals that are trying to infiltrate it. And you saw that I don't even use any kind of mesh to protect it. So when you load it properly, cover it properly, put enough material on top of it, animals, they go by smell. They just don't smell anything, so they don't come. So that makes our pile always kind of like nice and peaceful and undisturbed. So, and that's it. I also will make a record of temperature after insertion of the thermometers. So I'll go back to my temperature records here, and what I record how much we loaded, which is basically we loaded 14 buckets, averaging 4. So 40, I would say we loaded about 45 gallons of Humanure. So I would say plus 45 gallons Humanure. And then we loaded 4 receptacles of food, which were full, which comes up basically to about 16 gallons of food, plus 16 gallons food. And this way, Walter, you could see there, this way we'll know exactly kind of how much, what our pile contained. So we obviously over that amount, so we're probably approaching 1,000 gallons right now. And basically 1,000 gallons of Humanure means 25,000 gallons of water saved. So we keep that record, and then I'll make a note of the temperature, which is right now, the middle is 60 degrees, which is nothing obviously, right? So you would see how this 60 degrees will become 140 in 2 days. And here we have 116 degrees on the edge. So I make a note of that temperature, 60 degrees. And side thermometer is 115. Yeah, 115 degrees. Okay.
Does the Humanure make you happy?
Very much so. it's every time I load, even though the load is a physical work, and sometimes like I know it comes with stigma, you know, of whatever handling other people poop. But I was telling to Walter that yeah, every time I load, it's like a cleansing for myself, you know. It does make me very happy, you know, when I see the loaded pile, and then a couple days later I see the temperature skyrocketing, which really that device, I call it a telephone. This is really a telephone. So what this telephone tells me is how happy the creatures inside this pile are if they awoken, you know. And they wake above 115 degrees, and when we came here before, you saw 140, which really means that telephone tells us that creatures inside this pile, they really have like a discotheque, you know. So it's very wonderful process that brings me a lot of joy.